Combine is officially over, and I'm in love. Oh my, O'Cyrus. I'll tell you all about it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What is happening, good people? Thank you for joining me, Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast. We're at your team every day, and we thank you for making us your first listen. Quick reminder, we are free on all platforms. Wherever you get your podcast, you'll get us, and you won't have to pay for it. Also, make sure you like and subscribe on the YouTube page. Hit that like button. I get so many people that watch it and so few likes. I don't get a lot of hate, but I just don't get the like button hit as often. Hit the like button for me on the YouTube page as well. The combine has come and gone, or it came and went. And man, were there a lot of really, really good prospects. And not only a lot of really good prospects, because everyone's going to talk about the quarterbacks, and they should be. What Anthony Richardson did physically did not surprise me. What he was also able to do, I guess, emotionally and in the interview process, and we didn't hear it, but we heard about it. I wouldn't necessarily say it surprised me, but it was a situation where I said good for him, right? CJ Stroud did his thing and did exactly what I thought he was going to do. He was going to spin the hell out of that ball, and he really did that, and he looked super, super confident. Will Levis looked pretty good. Bryce Young, of course, didn't throw. So I was really, really pleased with the fact that I know this league is going to be in good hands moving forward. So why am I talking about quarterbacks? I'm talking about quarterbacks because hopefully all four of those guys go in the first round before the Jacksonville Jaguars pick. And any new listeners out there, you guys know that we are absolutely giddy here about having Trevor Lawrence as the quarterback for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So if you guys are wondering, why is this guy, I'm here for the first time, why is he talking about quarterbacks? Because I want all of those guys to get picked, because the Jaguars are picking 24th. If all of those guys essentially get picked, that means the Jaguars are picking 20th. So let me do the math for you. The Jaguars don't need a quarterback. I want everything the Jaguars don't need or desire to take in the first round to go before they pick. That means that they will get the tailor-made guy for them at a higher selection than number 24. So I already kind of think that's going to happen. I also wanted to. There's some guys, like, for instance, you can't say you don't need Will Anderson, right? The edge rusher. You can't say you don't need a guy like that, because if he's there, you take him. I don't care where you're picking. You take him if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars. If he fell to 24, obviously you take him. If he fell to 15, I think the Jaguars should move up and get him, right? Because those are positions where you need more people than just your starters. In fact, your backups can sometimes be considered just as good as your starters in, certain situations. For me, it's just a matter of what positions where you don't need a guy. And then after that, the positions where you don't have to take a guy at that position, because they have Trayvon Walker and, of course, they have Josh Allen, right? And it would be like overkill to get Will Anderson, because he probably wouldn't start, or somebody wouldn't start that you think is going to start. What happens is sometimes it lines up that you're going to get a person at a need position where there is no rotation, where there is no need to get an abundance of guys at that spot. Sometimes you just need that dude. And oh my God, I think I found him. I was in love with the prospect of it already. But University of Florida guard O'Cyrus Torrence looked exactly like I thought he would. In fact, he might have looked even better. And I think he is a guy you draft if you're Jacksonville at 24, and you take him and you stick him at left guard. And of course, barring injuries, he's going to sit there for 10 years and be a bully in the running game. He's going to sit there and be a people mover. He's going to sit there and guard the three technique and wear the three techniques from these other teams, these guys that are these great pass rushers, going to give them the business and wear them out all game. And it's almost like landing body punches in a boxing match where eventually what you'll end up doing is you zap a guy's power. If you keep punching him and keep hitting him and keep grinding on him, he ain't going to be able to rush the passer late when these guys like to get after the quarterback. So, needless to say, I took about 4 or 5 minutes to tell you that O'Cyrus Torrence is my wish list, is at the top of my wish list for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I just don't know if he's going to make it. If he gets anywhere close to them, I think they should take him. And here's why. These are the things that I'm going to discuss today. We're going to talk about some more players at some different positions and where you can possibly get them in the draft because of the depth. So as much as you guys know that I hate saying you can get a guy, we're going to actually start being able to put guys in certain spots, and we're going to see who you can target at a certain spot. Not who can you fall to, but who will be there to the point where you're going to pick because of the depth of these positions that you can then zoom in on and say, no, I want this guy. If you got to move up a little bit, you can go get him. I don't think you screw around with O'Cyrus Torrence, because as much as I love Steve Avila and the Peter Skoronski kid, who I don't think quite is a fit here, even though he's a real good player, I'm looking for, if you notice, I'm looking for big, massive road graders who can move their feet, play with toughness, wear the other team out, and be a bully bodyguard for Travis Etienne, and most importantly, Trevor Lawrence. All right? I'm looking for Landon Dickerson. I'm looking for Trey Smith. I'm looking for guys. I'm looking for Jason Kelce type, even though Jason Kelce's a center. I'm looking for that nastiness on that offensive line that will protect our pretty guys, right? If you will, but that gives us that nastiness and that toughness. I'm when you're on the losing end or you're on the team that doesn't have certain guys. So I'm just telling you, I'm sick of Aaron Donald if we have to play him. I'm sick of Chris Jones. I'm sick of Jeffrey Simmons. I'm sick of all of these big, nasty, mean guys because the Jaguars don't seemingly have, and haven't for a while, had an answer for him. Well, how do you answer big nasty? You get big nasty on your side, and that's what I think O'Cyrus Torrence brings to the table for Jacksonville. I got to give you some contingency picks, though, and I got to tell you, by looking at the combine, where I think the depth is as it pertains to what the Jaguars need, right, and what makes sense. I'm going to do that. But I had to let you know about Mr. Torrence first, and I'm going to hit you with more of that a little bit later in segment 3. I'm going to tell you, if you don't get O'Cyrus Torrence, where can you find the big nasty? That sounds really terrible, but if you listen to the entire thing in context, you know exactly what it is I am talking about, because this is a family show, all right? So more of that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars, but first, I got to let you guys know. That's right. I got to let you guys know about Built Bar. That's right, man. Built Bar is the absolute treat that I've said it is over the last couple of years. I've told you. It's covered with 100% chocolate, right? They have massive flavors. When you're talking about guys that's using peanut butter, right? Cookie dough. You're not talking about the run-of-the-mill protein bar that's waxy and chalky and kind of tastes like a cardboard box. No, you're talking about Built Bar, which tastes like a candy bar, but acts like a protein bar. And what I mean by acts like a protein bar, the macros of Built Bar are off the chain. 130 calories, but 17 powerful grams of protein, maybe only 4 grams of sugar. Unreal, but it's the truth. And you can now get them at Walmart and Sam's. That's right. Run into the pharmacy department at Walmart, and you're going to see a 4-bar box of Built Bars. And then in Sam's, you want to get like me, you want to make sure you load up. They got a 13-bar box for you in Sam's. Make sure you get all the flavor that you need at Built Bar, and it'll protect you too while you're trying to watch your waistline. It's Built Bar. Check them out also at built.com. All right, man, rolling along here on Locked On Jaguars. I want to talk about some other positions real quick, and then I'm going to get back to my love fest with O'Cyrus Torrence. Because in your mind, I want you to start preparing yourself for this. Whether or not they keep Juwan Taylor or not, and it's starting to look more and more like the likelihood is no, they won't, even though they want to. But he's going to be the number one tackle on the market, and I think he's going to be gone. But I want you to start looking at, just do it yourself. Look up the depth chart and look at the weights of the guys. Put O'Cyrus Torrence in at left guard and look at the massive amount of power that generates for the Jaguars. Other winners at other positions. Those corners, man. You know what? They had two corners at the University of Maryland that just absolutely won and absolutely smoked it out. And one of them, we had already discussed and we had already talked about some of these corners ad nauseum already, because we had been doing mock drafts here for weeks and guys were really setting themselves apart. I didn't know that they were going to all run as fast as they did. The cornerbacks ended up being the fastest group at the combine. I know a lot of people say, well, they should be. They're the lightest guy. No, there's some wide receivers that are just as small as some of these corners. So Devin Witherspoon did not run because of a previous injury to his hamstring. He was a little bit tweaked, but the widely considered the top guy because of his competitiveness. Devin Witherspoon will give more at his workout. But I saw Christian Gonzalez from Oregon, who was long. I saw Joey Porter Jr., who was long. And when I talk about length, these guys actually fit what you think Trent Baalke loves in corners. However, there's a little bit of it's not really an issue. The Jaguars have an outside corner in Darius Williams who plays better outside than he does in the slot. The thing is with Darius, he's a small guy. So here's what I decided. You can't force a square peg into a round hole, right? And what's best for the Jaguars is if you leave Darius outside, but you can find someone who has the prototypical size that you like, but he can play the slot. Like, for instance, I'm just going to mention this just for housekeeping. I'm not mentioning this as a possibility. Jalen Ramsey is listed at about 6'1", but I think Jalen he's about 6'1 3/4. He's almost 6'2". He's over 200 pounds, and Jalen can play the slot, right? So, but he can play anywhere. Can you find someone, ideally, who can play the slot now to help your team, but when you need him to for a long term? Because I don't know if you necessarily want to use a first-round pick on just someone who's purely a slot. Look, for long term, can you let him play the slot now? And then long term, when you're looking down the line, 2 or 3 years from now, can he go outside at what is the more valuable spot? And that's arguable, but the outside corner, to me, he's always going to be on the field and base or whatever. And he has a lot more things that he needs to be able to do. But can you find somebody like that where you're not just drafting a slot guy, you're drafting a football player who can play the slot for you until you ask him to do something else? So all of these guys I mentioned can do that. Deonte Banks, every corner that I've mentioned outside of Witherspoon is 6'2", and Baalke loves his long, lengthy football players, right? 6'2". Emmanuel Forbes, he's 6 feet. We listed at 180. He was 166 at the combine. He's a little skinny. It's a little thin, but he's a real good football player. But you get the guys like Cam Smith, that's 6 feet, 188, but he's extremely physical. Tyreek Stevenson, 6 feet, 214. He's played inside and outside. One that really strikes me is Garrett Williams. Garrett Williams can play inside and outside, and he's pesky from Syracuse. He was coached really well, too, by Coach Love. So Travius Hodges Tomlinson, I believe, by the way, yeah, that is LT LaDainian Tomlinson's nephew. I believe he's going to be a slot guy. He's just like Darius Williamson, a guy who looks like a slot guy, but he can play both inside and outside. But then at 5'9", 180, I don't necessarily think he's what the Jaguars are looking for. Like if you get 2 5'9" guys in your secondary, eventually people are going to start picking at you, right? And so Darius Williams, who's already here, is like 5'9.5". Eli Ricks is intriguing, extremely intriguing. Left LSU, went to Alabama, never really got on the field like you wanted him to, but he's 6'2", 190. When you watch him play, really, really looks a lot like Antonio Cromartie when he played. A guy that did impress was Julius Brents at 6'4", 202. I don't think Brents helps you at all in the slot. I think he's a pure outside corner, but that probably won't knock the Jaguars or stop the Jaguars from getting him. And then Keely Ringo ran fast at 6'2", 210, but I know you ain't put him in the slot because the big question on him is whether or not he can change directions. Darius Rush is another guy at 6'2", 200 that I really, really like. I think he can absolutely play. And last but not least, Jacorian Bennett, another kid from Maryland who ran a very, very fast time in the 4.2 range. I mean, in the 4.3 range at 5'11", 195. I think he can play inside and out. So I said all that to say this and how I'll make that position relevant. I actually think that might be one of the top 2 or 3 needs. And I previously said that it's one of the top 2 or 3 needs. And sometimes you can maybe even think that it's the number 1 need on the team. And I won't argue with you. But the thing is the reason why I just mentioned all of those people, because if you take O'Cyrus Torrence at 24, we don't go, you can find a guy. We go, can you find one of the guys that you want? At 56, the Jaguars will be in striking range to get somebody I just mentioned. Maybe not the first 2 or 3 names, but what you probably won't see them be able to do, the guard that I think provides them the big nasty behind, and this is the segue to segment 3, the guard that I think provides that same sort of big nasty, if you will, is Steve Avila. I don't think he lasts until 56 because the guard market, while there's a lot of guys that can play, there aren't a lot of guys like those 2 people, right? Whereas with the corner position, there's a boatload. There's a boatload of guys that I didn't mention who I think can be pretty good cornerbacks in the NFL. Like Tyson Campbell wasn't ready his first 6 months here. Tyson Campbell really came on the second half of his rookie season. So I don't mean day one ready. I mean day one able to, on day one, you're going to be able to stick them out there, right? And they'll start their learning curve and their learning process while they're being super, super competitive. So more about all of that here as the combine ended. And I am sitting here writing Santa a letter, even though it's March, that we need some O'Cyrus Torrence under our Christmas tree. He's too big to bring down the chimney. You definitely won't see him coming down the chimney. More on all of that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. Segment 3 rolling along. Post-combine, our first post-combine show here. And we thank you for making us your first listen here on Locked On Jaguars because it's your team every day. Talking about people that I really, really liked in the draft, that I don't have to talk about a bunch of folks that don't play positions that the Jaguars really need some help. I tell you what, we talked about young edge rushers because of the depth that has to happen. There are a boatload of those dudes that I was really, really super, super impressed with. Because as much as we can talk about need, we still have to at least try to line need up with best player available. And some of this is based on also what the Jaguars have been able to do so far in free agency. I tell you some people, let me tell you a couple of guys that I liked them prior to the combine, and I really, really liked them more and more as the combine played itself out. One guy that is within range is Sidney Brown. I think Sidney Brown from Illinois is going to be a really, really good player. And if the Jags decide to not go strictly corner for someone who can play in the slot, even though he measures at about, they list him at 6 feet, 205, Sidney Brown ain't never seen 6 feet. Sidney Brown has to be about 5'10" and a half, right? And I know it doesn't fit. And I know I just said you don't want 2 short guys. But what if you got a short guy that plays like a big guy? Every now and then in this league, there are guys, whether it's Chauncey Gardner-Johnson or CJ Gardner-Johnson, however you want to say his name, or whether it's Bob Sanders, whether it's Troy Polamalu, the position that they play, it doesn't fit their size. But neither does their attitude and neither does how they play the game. Sidney Brown is going to make somebody a very, very good defensive player. I think Sidney Brown is going to end up being one of those guys that is, it's really, really hard to absolutely describe exactly what it is you see in a player that doesn't really show up or pop as much as you think it should on tape. He's just a football player, man. And you can't help being in love with a guy who does everything, who pops off tape, who runs like the wind, who hits everything in sight, who always finds himself somewhere near the football, and who it feels like that if he's added to this team would really, really ingratiate himself with the community. And it's somebody that I can I've envisioned, and let me tell you what I've envisioned. I've envisioned O'Cyrus Torrence and Sidney Brown being added to this team. And the first thing that I think about is we can win a bar fight. We can win a bar fight. We can scrap and scrape. And it's just another element of a guy that if you put him on your team, he's going to find a way to make things happen. So I named all of those corners because I said, yeah, they'll be able to move something or shake something at 56. If they decide to go with a guy like Sidney Brown and put him in a slot, and he's going to have to guard tight ends, and he's going to have to play the flat, and he's going to have to be a big nickel as opposed to going to a small nickel, I think Sidney Brown can do it. I've also seen him turn and run down the field with wide receivers and always find a way to get his hand on the ball. Will there occasionally be a ball that you go, dang, he didn't get that one because he's too short or his arms aren't very long? Yeah. I'm not talking about the negative play that happens every now and then. I'm talking about the plus positive plays that I believe he'll be on. With that being said, there's something that I have to bring up here, and it's very, very important. Isn't it fun that we're not sitting here naming skill position players and pass the guys that we're always talking about in the top 5, where the Jaguars pick forever. Now we're talking about, I'm sitting here with a straight face telling you to add a guard and a hybrid safety corner who has some traits issues as it pertains to measuring up to the traits that everyone knows that Trent Baalke like. But I'm just telling you, I think that they'll just put an identity on this team and they'll make this team a lot better. They'll make them so much better than you can even imagine. Both of those guys, O'Cyrus Torrence, Sidney Brown. Now, does that mean I think the Jaguars should be done? No, I think they still should come up and get one of these corners. I think they still should look at the depth at the tight end position. What if in the first round, they look at their board and they say, you know what, we can move back and get an extra third. If you move back and get an extra third, if you're able to get O'Cyrus Torrence still, just move back a little bit, 28, 29, still get your guard, still come back and get Sidney Brown, and then you have 2 third-round picks. You still have the 4th round. I think they got 2 4th-round picks. You can still at that point, matter of fact, I'm going to do a mock draft today, and I hope this is what happens, that I'm now able to come up and get a player at the 2 spots where I think this draft is super, super deep. I think they have to touch the corner because eventually you can never have too many. Get you the lengthy corner that you need, Darius Rush. I think they'll be able to still touch the tight end position. Everyone knows how much I love Luke Musgrave. If they're going to franchise tag Evan Ingram, you could still use Luke Musgrave. You could still use Darnell Washington. But because they have franchise tagged the one, and I know they run 2 tight ends the most, I'm looking at who's going to help this team. And then I'm looking at someone who can supplement Evan Ingram. And where in the draft does it look like depth-wise that you'll be in a position to be able to still get that guy? And I think you can get him in the 4th round based on the depth and the guys that we like, and the fact that he doesn't have to be a dynamic pass catcher, quote unquote. He can just be a guy who can catch, but mainly he can also be an inline guy who can block and be your second tight end. Because they want to go after Ingram so bad, and that's fine with me, because if they didn't, then I would be sitting there telling them they need to take Luke Musgrave and come back and draft Steve Avila at some point in the 2nd round, even if they have to move up, because Musgrave is one of my favorite players. But I've put in my mind that I'm not going to be closed-minded, but I'm going to try to find a way for the Jaguars to get what they need, and also what you can't get anywhere else, and go get it and pluck a guy that can give you a surefire tackler on defense, someone who can play the slot with a high football IQ. If you don't take him, he's going to Kansas City, or he's going to New England or Baltimore. And then you go, damn, why didn't we get a dude like that? You know, guys, there's a lot of guys around the league over the past years that have had his type of impact. We mentioned C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Jordan Poyer is the same type of dude. Can you imagine that kind of production at a young age, combined with Cisco and combined with Rayshawn, combined with Tyson Campbell, to really help you out on the back end? It's tremendous. So with all of that being said, everyone's going to sit there and say, well, Wig, you ain't addressed the edge yet. I think they're going to address the edge in the veteran market. I really do. I look for them to either bring back Arden Key, or I look for them to give a 1-year deal to Jadeveon Clowney, someone like that. The same way these other teams have been able to approach the veteran free agent market and pull in a Zadarius Smith, or pull in someone. And the Jaguars will have the capability to do that this year for this reason. This is a destination place. Teams want to win. They want to win. Guys want their money, but they also want to feel like they're going to play in the playoffs and have a chance to have a great season and a great atmosphere and have everything feel good during the year. So don't ever underestimate that part of it too, especially when the money is, all relative. We're going to discuss this more. We're going to pull a lot of stuff in a lot of different scenarios, but I had to start the week telling you about O'Cyrus Torrence and Sidney Brown. Not premium positions, but premium attitude, premium ball players that will get. Just imagine, I just comped both of these dudes, the 2 guys. What if at some point you draft them, and maybe not day one, but you end up with the same production of Landon Dickerson and C.J. Gardner-Johnson? Would you take that if you're a Jaguar fan? I think the answer is yes. And I hope the answer is yes when I ask you, will you be back tomorrow? Because I know you will, because it's your team every day. We thank you for making this your first listen, and take care of each other, and see us here tomorrow. We're going to continue more of this draft talk. We're going to spotlight some guys in free agency too that'll supplement the draft talk, because really now, remember, the Jaguars are now supplementing their draft picks with free agency as opposed to the other way around. So we'll see you guys here, same place, same time tomorrow.